That's the way they all became the Brady Bunch.
What's your 20? About 16 miles this side of Mississippi.
Well, we want Super Pong by Atari.
Yes, but
Super Pong's 4 color games are more fun.
The 70s were riddled with hilarious moments, from mismatched socks worn in public to disappointing homemade perms. These are the funny things about the 1970s you definitely remember.
That's right. The pet rock, introduced in 1975, was billed as the 70s alternative to man's best friend.
The 70s went bonkers when googly-eyed rocks hit the market. It started as a joke, a suggestion that rocks would make the perfect pet because of how docile they were and they wouldn't need any care. The little gag turned into a business idea that made millions of dollars. Gary Dahl invented pet rocks in 1975 and advertised them as the perfect low-maintenance pet. They were rocks with googly eyes that came with accessories. When they hit the market, people rushed to store shelves to get a pet rock. Clever marketing of the pet rock made it a highly sought-after product, and children were fascinated with it. Everyone wanted to own one. Each product was sealed in a ventilated cardboard that resembled a pet carrier, with straws to provide sitting comfort for the rock. The smooth stones came with a hilarious 32-page instruction manual on how to train your rock. Some of the tricks included stunts like sit, stay, and more. They were priced at $3.95, and within a few months, Dahl was a millionaire. They made the cover of magazines and were featured in TV shows, becoming a symbol of consumer behavior and an example of how good marketing could sell just about anything. Remember hilarious disco parties of the 1970s? Disco fever was a blend of funk, soul, and Latin music combined with an upbeat rhythm. Flashy lights and wild fashion made it a fun experience, and artists like the Bee Gees, Earth, Wind & Fire, and Donna Summer dominated the pulsing beats. It became an atmosphere of fun where you were either doing the hustle or staying alive, or hitting the bump to don't stop till you get enough. Discos were famous for unforgettable fashion. Shiny fabrics, platform shoes, and bell-bottoms, along with jumpsuits, made people stand out under the strobe lights. Disco was even more popular with the release of Saturday Night Fever in 1977, starring John Travolta. Disco will be remembered for many years for how it brought people together. Facial hair became serious business in the 1970s, with various styles and iconic trends hitting the big screen. Mustaches became massive, reaching the peak of their popularity in Hollywood, with everyday men embracing the look of masculinity, doggedness, and beauty. The thicker the stash, the better. The rebellious facial hair was showcased by actors, athletes, musicians, and even politicians. It didn't matter whether it was Tom Selleck's chevron mustache or Hulk Hogan's horseshoe, it always gave off a classic, tough, no-nonsense vibe. If you wanted to add flair, you could put in curls at the end. They were a personality marker and a symbol of masculinity in the 70s that teens couldn't wait to grow. Those who had one got the attention of the ladies, and it's funny how such a small modification in facial features could change an entire fortune from an ordinary guy into the coolest person in the room. Mood rings were a colorful fashion accessory in the 1970s that captured the imagination of everyone with its supposed superpowers. It was said the rings revealed your emotional state by changing from one color to another. Invented by Josh Reynolds and Maris Ambats in 1975, they became an instant success. Everyone wanted to get a mood ring to tell them their mood. They contained a liquid crystal encased in quartz or glass, and the thermochromic elements change colors based on the temperature of the skin. People theorized this shift determined a person's mood, and the rings picked up their temperature differences to change to many colors. They allowed people to find connections to how they felt. The ring sold for $45 to $75 at the height of popularity, but the trend soon faded as cheap knockoffs flooded the market. Fashion trends of the 70s could never be discussed without mentioning bell-bottoms. The groovy flared pants were worn by both male and female, and were symbolic of the era of freedom, rebellion, and practicality. Bell-bottoms were fitted trousers that flared below the knee, creating a dramatic, wide-legged design that resembled a bell. They were mostly perfect, except for the fact they got caught indoors. This design was first used as practical clothing for the U.S. Navy. The wide legs allowed sailors to roll up their pants while working on deck. The design made its way to the mainstream and entertainment in the 60s through counterculture movements, which edged towards bold statements, breaking rules, and nonconformity. Artists like Led Zeppelin, the Bee Gees, and more sported the attire, and they were featured in popular TV shows like Charlie's Angels. They made a revival in the 90s with new retro fashion that showed bell-bottoms in a different light before slowly fading again. There's no doubt they'll make a comeback in the near future. Do you remember lamps with awkward blobs moving around inside of them? These lamps were a notable part of the 60s and 70s, and the lava lamp stood out because of its unique features that left children in awe. Lava lamps brought a sophisticated and captivating touch to homes, with colorful and slow-moving blobs that went around in a mesmerizing way. They were invented in 1963, and by the 70s became popular, fitting into the counterculture and psychedelic trends of the time. The motion of the wax blob was a match for the laid-back meditative habit of young people in the 70s, especially popular with hippies. The lamp was available in a variety of colors, and when it was turned on, the heat caused the wax to melt and rise, creating moving globs that slowly shifted around in an awkward shape. The lava lamp is loved for its timeless appeal, remembered for an almost mystic look. If you've ever listened to CB radio slangs, especially those developed by truckers, you'll be entertained by the cryptic words of humor behind the terms. Citizen band radios were used by truckers and travelers to communicate on long trips and make it a bit more fun. They found ways to exchange information in slang just in case authorities were listening in. This slang was necessary for security purposes and helped to create a sense of community. You'll hear terms such as 10-4, good buddy, breaker 1-9, and what's your 20 that became a cultural phenomenon and was featured in movies like Convoy and Smokey and the Bandit, as well as music videos and TV shows. It's still used today amongst truckers and remains a nostalgic piece of the past that will never fade. Roller skating has been around for decades, but in the 70s it began to fuse with the disco trend, forming something known as the roller disco. Roller skating in a rink with a phenomenal music mix under flashy lights while dancing on skates was a trend that brought people together, and roller rinks were usually full of glitzy, colorful outfits, tube socks, and sequin tops. It was a fashion disaster, but people made up for it with catchy dance-offs. The roller disco was a major part of pop culture and featured in films like Roller Boogie in 1979. Disco skate nights were held in parks and even on streets, and it was an era of fun, entertainment, and music that brought people together. The carefree culture of roller disco faded in the 90s, though there are still places today that keep up this nostalgic culture and bring people together to enjoy the music with disco balls and roller skating.
This Super Pong by Atari?
I'm sold out. That's a demonstrator, but I've got lots of these.
Well, we want Super Pong by Atari.
Yes, but
Super Pong's 4 color games are more fun.
Pong was one of the first arcade games ever created, and as you can imagine, every child went crazy about the simple one-dimensional game. It was essentially a digital version of table tennis, with 2 control paddles for every player at both ends of the screen. The players had to tap the ball back and forth, stopping it from passing the paddle. The scoreboard at the top showed the highest score, or like real table tennis. Pong was introduced in 1972 by the co-founder of Atari, and while it may seem incredibly basic, compared to the standards of today, it was easy to learn and became rather addictive. People would lose track of time playing the game in the arcade or at home, and over time it evolved into more modern and complex versions, but remains one of the earliest games that people grew up loving. Platform shoes were a huge fashion trend in the 70s, loved for thick and high soles which added several inches to a person's height. The shoes were popular with men and women, quickly becoming a symbol of glamour and fashion, and worn by musicians and disco-goers, later evolving into modern versions with extra high soles made of wood, foam, and cork. These exaggerated and chunky soles aligned with the 70s style and matched with bell-bottoms, mini dresses, and other outlandish wear. Platform shoes ranged from 2 to 7 inches, and even with the difficulty of movement and possibility of falling over, some people loved the image of the shoes, thinking that it looked cool. The Spice Girls and others kept the platform shoes trend even in the 90s, but it faded with time as wearing and managing the shoes became more of a tedious task. How about fondue parties? The communal culinary craze that combined fun food with a social setting that brought people together to eat out of a single pot. The fondue pot usually contained a hot pot with either a mixture of cheese, white wine, and spices, served with dipping, or chocolate fondue with treats like bananas, cake cubes, and strawberries. The fondue often included small pieces of meat, vegetables, seafood, and a variety of dipping sauces. The parties were an enjoyable experience and often experimental, especially when mixing leftovers to avoid waste. At fondue parties, the melting pot offered a warm explosion of flavor, and everyone could eat out of the pot without restriction. It was often chaotic and fun, with cheesy disasters, but way more organized events like weddings and retro-themed celebrations were better. Fondue parties are still a thing today, practiced by those who share a love for the nostalgic 70s Swiss origins. Macrame crafts were a trendy home decor in the 1970s, known for intricate and stylish knotting techniques that created beautiful and appealing decorative patterns. Usually hung on walls and used as plant holders or curtains, they were even made as a table of furniture covering. Macrame originated from the 13th century, made a comeback in the 70s when handmade bohemian DIY decor became an alluring aesthetic. The macrame appeal is in its simplicity and connection to nature, which was a huge deal for hippies and nature lovers of the 70s. Artistic designs were incorporated into wall hangings and accessories like clothing, belts, necklaces, and more, and they were sold at craft fairs and flea markets. The only problem was the possibility of starting a fire because the material was light and could easily burn. The designs faded in the 80s when hippies came to an end. However, it remained popular in home decor options for minimalist homes and event centers. If you wanted to show how great of a dancer you were in the 1970s, you had to perform the electric slide. The simple dance was performed as a group and popular at parties, weddings, and get-togethers. Always a good idea to stand at the back if you couldn't catch the moves or risk stepping on someone else's foot. The choreography was created in 1976 by Rick Silver as a dance to the song Electric Boogie. The slide became a part of cultural significance with its continuous sequence and flow, allowing people to use it for various applications like ceremonial dance, celebrations, and aerobics. The slide is one of the few moves from the disco era that's maintained its relevance to people today. It's still performed in school dances, weddings, family gatherings, and all other events, adaptable to different music genres, while representing a light-hearted dance suited to every demographic. Afros of the 1970s were a spectacle that represented self-expression, cultural identity, and pride. The hairstyles were voluminous and often associated with the Black race movement, embracing natural beauty and quickly becoming a trend in pop culture. What began as an African-American standard of beauty was also a display of cultural heritage and was sometimes political. Numerous celebrities and public figures were seen spotting an afro, and many unforgettable movies and shows featured the hairstyle. It normalized across mainstream media and left a long-lasting impact on fashion. Today, it transcends a single race and in its own way marks a period of transformation while remaining a statement of power, cultural pride, and a fancy choice of hairstyle.
Desi, I'd like you to meet my mother, Mrs.
Brady.
Yeah.
Up next is the beloved Brady Bunch. This wholesome blending of humor with dynamics of retro American family is fun for everyone who love TV comedy. The catchy theme song and unique faces and squares in the intro made it a memorable piece. It followed the lives of a family consisting of a widowed father with 3 sons who marries a widowed woman with 3 daughters. The math adds up to a whole lot of family drama and comedy. This show was created by Sherwood Schwartz, centered around sibling rivalry, everyday troubles, and learning important life lessons. It captured the interest of millions and became an all-time favorite, airing from the 70s to the 90s with universal familiarity. The Brady Bunch set the pace for future family-based sitcoms, creating genuineness and lighthearted fun. The 70s was a time of outlandish fashion trends which added a dash of quirkiness to everyday outfits. The younger generation experimented with color designs and fashion choices that pushed the boundaries of creativity. One of these choices was fashionable mismatched socks, which may look like a mistake but found its audience amongst hippies and the free-spirited. The wearing of mismatched socks conveyed a subtle rebellious attitude, proving that fashion was multicolored and should never be confined to societal expectation. Teens wore these socks every chance they got. The gym would be full of people burning fat in mismatched socks. Television shows, magazines, and more featured this absurd trend. It stuck around until the 2000s before going away, and they may be featured in movies every once in a while to depict the originality of the 70s. The 70s were a time of glam rock, the most electrifying music and fashion movement ever witnessed in history. The genre was derived from rock music, known for its outrageous costumes, wild makeup, and flamboyant stage performances with theatrical twists. It began in 1971 with David Bowie as one of glam rock's biggest pioneers and icons. He took it to extraordinary heights with his alter ego Ziggy Stardust. Glam rock explored various facets of human existence like sexuality, identity, and nonconformity, making the genre a safety net for those who wanted to explore the depths of creative expression. Glam rock artists wore excessively sparkly outfits and glitter, sequins, platform boots, and more. Men wore makeup, women dazzled in suits, and everything was influenced by science fiction, fantasy, and escapism. The distinct sounds mixed traditional rock and roll with pop, and glam rock slowly faded out and left its influence, theatrics, and flamboyance in modern times. Remember those disastrous home perms in the 1970s that didn't go as planned? They became popular, with both men and women booking appointments to get their fix. However, they often lost their texture within a few days, and you'd have to book another appointment. This inspired the DIY home kit approach for convenience and affordability, but sadly the process often led to disaster like burnt hair, uneven curls, and dry and damaged hair. The home perm disaster was so common it became a punchline on sitcoms in the 70s and 80s. Articles and beauty magazines also warned about the dangers of the home perm, highlighting embarrassing moments in magazines where people shared personal experiences. Salon visits were recommended for those who didn't want to suffer a bad hair day. The 70s were a time of dramatic television soap operas, and TV dramas of all sorts aired on the big screen, gripping viewers with a roller coaster of emotions. Some cried while others laughed, and notable soap operas like Dallas, All My Children, and General Hospital brought viewers to the peak of emotional intensity. The over-the-top storylines, cliffhangers, and complex relationships made people experience the realities of love, betrayal, and challenges of family secrets. Fans were enthralled with suspense as they followed the journey of their favorite character, often towards heartbreak, and the melodrama and nostalgic charm of the 70s soap opera will always be remembered for the way they made the audience feel. Drive-ins were the perfect outdoor place to watch a movie with friends and family. In the 1970s, many fell in love with the drive-in theater, and it provided a communal atmosphere where people could park and watch a movie from the comfort and safety of their car. A great summer activity that brought people together from all walks of life, drive-ins peaked in the 50s and 60s and were preferred to indoor theaters because there were fewer restrictions. You were allowed to talk, laugh, and honk at particular scenes and simply adjust your seat and lay back. Drive-ins became less popular in extreme weather and made it difficult for people to park and enjoy a film. They're still a thing today, especially in the summer in some parts of the US, a retro experience that will be around for decades to come. Which of these 70s experiences do you recall? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.